Good evening. I'd like to call to order the City Council meeting for the City of Wheat Ridge, Colorado for April the 24th, 2023. Would you please stand as you are able and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Will the clerk please call the roll of the members?
Valerie Nossler-Beck.
Here.
Leah Dozeman.
Here.
Scott Ohm.
Here.
Corey Stites.
Here.
Janice Hoppy.
Present.
Amanda Weaver. Absent by her own excuse. Rachel Hulteen.
Present.
Judy Hutchinson.
Here.
Mr. Mayor, 7 of the 8 council members are present. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Councilors, in your packets this week, you have study session notes for our meeting on April 3rd, 2023, and City Council meeting minutes on April the 10th of 2023. Are there any corrections to be noted in either of these notes or minutes? Seeing none, we will let the notes and minutes stay as presented with our thanks to the clerk. Are there any changes to be noted in the agenda? Seeing none, we will proceed with the agenda as noted, and we have several proclamations tonight. I would like to ask Julie DiTullio to join me at the podium. Thank you for coming. I'm pleased to make a proclamation in support of Mental Health Month, May 2023. Whereas good mental health is essential to the overall health and emotional well-being of all children, youth, adults, and families, and promotes a healthy community. And whereas 1 in 5 people in our community experience a mental health condition each year, and whereas 16.5% of individuals in our communities experience a substance disorder each year, and whereas increased focus on the prevention of mental health conditions and substance use disorders among children and adolescents through screening and early intervention helps improve lives, and whereas the stigma against mental health conditions and substance abuse disorders prevents many people from accessing care, and whereas when mental health problems and substance use disorders are detected early and treated, people can recover and maintain a healthy and independent life. And whereas the City of Wheat Ridge is dedicated to improving the health and well-being of our residents by ending stigma and focusing on integrated role of mental health in our lives. Now therefore, be it resolved that I, Bud Starker, Mayor of the City of Wheat Ridge and the City Council, do hereby proclaim May 2023 as Mental Health Month and call upon all residents, government agencies, public and private institutions, businesses and schools to recommit our communities and resources to increasing awareness of understanding of mental health, providing appropriate and accessible service for all community members, and making mental health a priority in our city. Dated this 24th day of April, 2023. Have that for you. Please come and say a few words if you'd like. You want to hold something, and you got it. I'm happy to do
that. Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm Julie DiTullio, Senior Coordinator of Donor Engagement at Jefferson Center for Mental Health. On behalf of the board, staff, and clients of Jefferson Center, thank you for issuing this proclamation and recognizing May as Mental Health Month in the City of Wheat Ridge. Jefferson Center is a nonprofit community mental health center. Every day we provide mental health care, substance use treatment, wellness services, and a host of additional resources to support the needs of so many people in our community. And this year we are excited to be celebrating our 65th anniversary. Each year, Jefferson Center touches the lives of nearly 30,000 people. We are committed to breaking down the barriers that prevent people from seeking care when they need it, which means services not only in office locations, but in more than 150 community settings, such as schools, medical practices, and nursing care facilities. We also partner with law enforcement, community centers, homeless shelters, and more. We could not do this without your support. We are so grateful to the City of Wheat Ridge and your partnership, including the ARPA funds. These dollars helped us expand our community engagement program, allowing us to bring information, education, and connection to thousands of people in our community. Your support meant more classes in suicide prevention, mental health first aid, and groups to support wellness and resilience. This gives each person the confidence and tools to help the people in their lives or even a total stranger who is struggling with their mental well-being. These last few years have stretched all of us. A recent Pulse survey showed that 61% of Coloradoans experienced mental health strains such as anxiety, depression, loneliness, or stress in the last year. For our children, the need is urgent. We know that about 1 in 5 students will experience a significant mental health problem during their school years. And in Colorado, suicide is the #1 cause of death for children starting at just age 10. Yet only about half of the people with a diagnosable mental health issue will seek treatment, either because the stigma associated with mental health problems is there or because they don't know where to turn. That is why your support for Mental Health Month is so important. Together, we will increase awareness and reduce the stigma often associated with mental health and substance use disorders. When the stigma fades, more people will seek care, and our community will become stronger and healthier. Thank you again for recognizing Mental Health Month and for supporting Jefferson Center. We could not do this important work without all of you. Thank you. All right. Should we get a picture?
We'll get some
Right.
pictures,
Is
yeah.
this one mine?
You can, that one's yours, yes. Okay. Are we all pictured up? Okay, thank you, Julie.
Thank you very much.
I'd like to invite our city clerk, Steve Kirkpatrick, to join me at the podium. Clerk Kirkpatrick. Thanks for being here. I am pleased to make a proclamation in support of Municipal Clerks Week, April 30th through May 6th, 2023. Whereas the office of the municipal clerk, a time-honored and vital part of local government, exists throughout the world, and whereas the office of the municipal clerk is the oldest among public servants and provides the professional link between community members, the local governing bodies, and agencies of government at other levels. And whereas municipal clerks have pledged to be ever mindful of their neutrality and impartiality, rendering equal service to all. And whereas the duties of the municipal clerk are many, including serving as the official record keeper for the municipality, issuing licenses and permits, facilitating the annual board of review and municipal redistricting project, attending meetings, and serving as a community resource. And whereas municipal clerks continue to strive to improve the administration of the affairs of the office of the municipal clerk through participation in education programs, seminars, workshops, and the annual meetings of their state, provincial, county, and international professional organizations. And whereas it is most appropriate that we recognize the accomplishments of the office of the municipal clerk. Now, therefore, be it resolved, I, Bud Starker, Mayor of the City of Wheat Ridge, and the Wheat Ridge City Council, to recognize the week of April 30th through May 6th, 2023 as Municipal Clerks Week, and further extend appreciation to our municipal clerk, Steve Kirkpatrick, and Deputy City Clerk, Robin Eaton, and all municipal clerks for the vital service they perform and their exemplary dedication to the communities that they represent. Dated this 24th day of April, 2023. Clerk Kirkpatrick. Thank you. Would you like to say a few words?
Sure. A year ago, the question of how long have we had municipal clerks came up. So I went and looked it up. 4,000 years ago, the first written code of laws was kept by the emperor scribe during the reign of Hammurabi. That was the first written code of laws in the history of the human race. Pretty interesting code. There were 99 statutes, 68 of which ended with the phrase, "shall be put to death." They were not kidding in the ancient empire of Hammurabi. So if you park your chariot in the emperor's parking space, you shall be put to death. More recently, we have become the record keepers, not the lawgivers, the law scribers for states, counties, and municipalities, and whatever local governments are called across the globe. There is an international institute of municipal clerks with membership from 90 plus countries. I'll close by saying that the most enjoyable thing about my job is when elderly people come into the office and they need to send proof of life back home to a country in Europe. This past week, a 94-year-old lady came in and had me stamp the city seal and sign her certificate so she could send it back to Rome and keep getting her retirement payments. She was so grateful she baked cookies, and I ate them, which was all of them.
All of them? Okay.
Every one of them.
Just wanted to be clear.
Which was probably an inappropriate bribe, but we won't go there. Thank you for recognizing what we do. Thank you to Robin Eaton, the best deputy clerk anyone knows of anywhere. And thank you very much for the honor of this proclamation.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm glad you've cut down by at least a third those capital offenses that you adjudicate. This is a proclamation in support of Asian Pacific American Heritage Month, May 2023. Whereas Asian Pacific American Heritage Month is a month to celebrate and pay tribute to the contributions of generations of Asian Pacific Americans to American history, society, and culture. And whereas the origin of Asian Pacific American Heritage Month dates back to the 95th Congress, which was 1977 through 78, when 5 joint resolutions were introduced proposing a week in May to be designated to commemorate the accomplishments of Asian Pacific Americans. And whereas on March 28, 1979, President Carter issued Proclamation 4650, the first presidential proclamation for Asian Pacific American Heritage Week, recognizing the significant role Asian Pacific Americans have played in the creation of a dynamic and pluralistic American society with their contributions to the sciences, arts, industry, government, and commerce. And whereas the month of May was chosen to commemorate the immigration of the first Japanese to the United States on May 7, 1843, and to mark the anniversary of the completion of the Transcontinental Railroad on May 10, 1869, whose tracks were mostly laid by Chinese immigrants. And whereas generations of Asian Pacific Americans of all backgrounds have been inspirational examples of leaders and trailblazers and have long-standing history of making significant cultural, economic, and scientific contributions across the United States. Now therefore be it resolved that I, Bud Starker, Mayor of the City of Wheat Ridge, and the Wheat Ridge City Council formally designate the month of May 2023 as Asian Pacific American Heritage Month and encourages everyone to commemorate this important occasion in recognition of the numerous contributions made by the Asian American Pacific Islander community locally, nationally and globally. Dated this 24th day of April, 2023. Thank you. And I would like to invite Ryan Placoris to join me at the podium. Ryan, thank you for being here. Ryan Placoris is the vocal music director at Wheat Ridge High School, where he also produces the spring musical. He is finishing his 6th year of teaching, all of that spent at Wheat Ridge. The choral music program at Wheat Ridge is one of continued excellence, where students learn and grow through music in a place of belonging and a culture where everyone is supportive and empathetic towards one another. I yield the microphone.
Thank you. I just wanted to say thank you to Mr. Mayor and to the City Council for having us here this evening and recognizing these wonderful students. I think it's so important that we as a community recognize that there are amazing things happening at Wheat Ridge High School, all in everything, activities, athletics, but also in choral music. And I am so proud of these students and all the work they've done. And as I said about our program, I truly think one of the best things about our program, and I think my students would say the same, is we just have a place where we can all go and just be ourselves and make good music with one another and connect with one another as humans. And I think not only does it teach us how to live life in many ways, but we learn music by doing that too. And that is one of the most special things, I think, to be a teacher and to work with these fine students, is to experience that on a day-to-day basis. Not only that, but these fine students have gone above and beyond in choral music. And by above and beyond, I mean we have a Jeffco honor choir that we do every year, and to do that, they have to show skills, sing a solo, do sight reading, and then on top of that, a lot of these students audition for All-State Choir, where they have to do all those things and more. And I have a lot of former students come back to me and say, you know, I think that was one of the hardest auditions I ever had to do, was auditioning for All-State. And it not only teaches you things about music, but it teaches you how to handle stressful situations, how to handle anxiety, all of those things, and it just makes you better people. And so even if you don't make it in, I think there's value in just going through that process. And I am just so honored to recognize these fine students here this evening for either getting into all-county choir or both all-county choir and all-state choir. So if I could start with Maddie Bailey, please come on up. Maddie Bailey's a senior and was a part of all-county choir this year. Then this next set of students made all-county choir and all-state choir. We have Cam Irick, Ronan Brennan, Ellie Weeb, and Talia Greco. Students, thank you so much for your hard work and for these fine accomplishments, and thank you all for recognizing these students and giving them a voice in our community to show all of their hard work.
Terrific. We're not done yet. Council loves to get a picture, so we're going to get you in front of the dais, and Okay, we're now ready for our public's right to speak. We invite to our meetings members of the public to come and speak on any item that's not on the agenda for a maximum of 3 minutes under the public's right to speak. If you have signed up to speak, I will call your name, and when I do, if you please come to the podium, give us your first name and your last name, and give us an address, and then you'll have 3 minutes to address the council. If you are joining us online, if you would please raise your hand in the virtual format, and then we will bring you into the meeting. I have no one signed up to speak on this, but if you're here in council chambers and would like to speak, you may do so now by coming to the podium. And I will ask our staff if anyone has raised their hand online.
No, Mr. Mayor.
Excuse me. Just another moment or so in case anyone comes forward or raises their hand. And I think that is not the case, so we will conclude our public's right to speak and go to our agenda item number 1. Councilor Nosler-Beck, would you please introduce this item?
Thanks, Mayor. Council Bill number 08-2023, an ordinance amending Article 4 of Chapter 26 of the Wheat Ridge Code of Laws concerning requirements for the dedication of public parks and sites and making conforming amendments therewith. At issue, the proposed ordinance exempts deed-restricted affordable dwelling units from the parkland dedication or fee in lieu requirement established by Section 26-414 of the subdivision code. It also adds a definition of deed-restricted affordable dwelling units to Section 26-123 of the code.
Thank you. This is an ordinance on first reading to set the date, time, and location for a public hearing. It is quasi-judicial. Councilor Nosler-Beck, may I have a motion on this item?
I move to approve Council Bill number 08-2023, an ordinance amending Article 4 of Chapter 26 of the Wheat Ridge Code of Laws concerning requirements for dedication of public parks and sites and making conforming amendments therewith. On first reading, order it published, public hearing set for Monday, May 8th, 2023 at 6:30 p.m. as a virtual meeting and in city council chambers, and that it takes effect 15 days after final publication.
Second.
We have a motion and a second by Councilor Hoppe. Would the clerk please poll the council?
Mr. Mayor, the motion has passed 7-0.
Thank you very much. We will go to agenda item number 2. Councilor Hulteen, would you please introduce this item?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to introduce Council Bill number 09-2023, an ordinance approving the transfer of municipally owned properties along Wadsworth Boulevard and from adjacent streets between 35th Avenue and Interstate 70 to the Colorado Department of Transportation. At issue, Wadsworth Boulevard is a state highway that is owned and maintained by the Colorado Department of Transportation, CDOT. The city has completed the right-of-way acquisition process for the Improve Wadsworth project. The next step is for council to approve the disposal or transfer of right-of-way to CDOT by ordinance.
Thank you. This is an ordinance on first reading to set the date, time, and location for a public hearing. It is not quasi-judicial. Councilor Hulteen, may I have a motion on this?
Yes, I move to approve Council Bill number 09-2023, an ordinance approving the transfer of municipally owned properties along Wadsworth Boulevard and from adjacent streets between 35th Avenue and Interstate 70 to the Colorado Department of Transportation. On first reading, order it published, public hearing set for Monday, May 8th, 2023 at 6:30 p.m. as a virtual meeting and in city council chambers.
Second.
We have a motion and a second by Mayor Pro Tem Stites. Would the clerk please poll the council?
Mr. Mayor, the motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. We will now go to agenda item number 3. Councilor Dozeman, would you please introduce this item?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Resolution number 21-2023, a resolution adopting the 44th Avenue Subarea Plan as an amendment to the city's comprehensive plan Envision Wheat Ridge. At issue, the 44th Avenue Subarea Plan outlines a 20-year vision for the area between Clear Creek and I-70 and is based on 12 months of input from Wheat Ridge businesses, organizations, and community members. This plan addresses the need to develop comprehensive strategies that, one, promote revitalization and attract investment to the West 44th Avenue corridor, and two, enhance the adjacent neighborhoods and the city as a whole. The plan reflects and builds upon input from the 2019 Neighborhood Revitalization Strategy and from the ongoing Let's Talk Resident Engagement Program. Like the city's other sub-area plans, this plan will be adopted as an amendment to the city's comprehensive plan.
Thank you. This will be a resolution of the council. It is not quasi-judicial. Mr. Goff, do we have a staff presentation on this item?
We do. Stephanie Stevens, senior planner, is here this evening to introduce this item.
Okay, Ms. Stevens.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Just give me a moment to get set up here. All right. All right, my name is Stephanie Stevens, and I'm a planner in the City of Wheat Ridge Community Development Department and project manager for the 44th Avenue Sub-Area Plan, which we are here to recommend adoption of tonight. The 44th Avenue Sub-Area Plan outlines a 20-year vision for the area bounded by I-70 and Clear Creek, and is based on more than 12 months of public input from Wheat Ridge businesses, organizations, and community members. The plan addresses the need to develop comprehensive strategies, and it reflects and builds upon input from the 2019 Neighborhood Revitalization Strategy and ongoing Let's Talk program, which identified the area as a priority for planning efforts. Today, West 44th Avenue has a mix of conditions that create a unique context for future planning and redevelopment. Investment and maintenance of private properties is lacking, and zoning and uses are disparate, which leaves room for improvement. So a big focus of this plan was to look at how to incentivize investment and revitalize the area, improve safety and connectivity, and address goals for new development or redevelopment that's cohesive with what's there now. This plan did not contemplate lane reductions or additions. It did not recommend displacement of any existing businesses, and it did not implement any changes that will happen right now. So for example, the recommended land uses in the plan will not change the zoning in the near term, but it will guide future development just as the Fruitdale sub-area plan and comprehensive plan do now. The street is in fairly good condition, and the roadway itself from curb to curb was not a part of the scope of work for this reason. Engagement for the project has been robust, as you will see in the engagement report that's attached to your packet materials. Technical analysis of the market, traffic, and existing conditions were conducted in parallel with the plan to guide ultimate recommendations of the plan, and these are also included in the plan appendices. An essential goal of the sub-area plan was to create a community-backed and realistic vision with actionable outcomes focused on revitalization and investment of the West 44th Avenue corridor and surrounding area. We last saw you in December at a study session where we discussed recommendations with you in great detail. Those recommendations are intended to guide the 20-year vision. Tonight, our consultant will walk you through the action plan, which is the newest content. The action plan is intended to include targeted actions that can be realistically achieved in a shorter time frame than the recommendations. So for example, from now until 10 years into the future, and then the recommendations go to 20 years out. Now I'd like to welcome Mark De La Torre and Jay Rankins, our project managers with MIG, who will be presenting to you all tonight and walking you through the action plan, and then I will wrap us up. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie, and thank you, Council. Reminder, I'm Jay Rankins with MIG, a principal with the firm. And I was with you during that study session in December when we went through the recommendations in pretty good detail. So I'm going to keep my portion pretty short and then turn it over to Mark to go over the highlights of the action plan. Thank you, Lauren. What we'd like to review with you is really quickly the project elements and outreach findings, but we're actually going to, since you have that in your packet, we're just going to give you some highlights of some of the different engagement tools that we utilized. Mark is then going to give you again a highlight of just sort of the categories of the recommendations, and then spend the bulk of the brief presentation on the implementation priorities. So a reminder, and Stephanie alluded to this, we did have technical analysis as a part of this effort. Really importantly, though, we also had a lot of community outreach. And I would say that while we provided the technical analysis and sort of potential recommendations, it was really the community that drive the vision, the goals, as well as the ultimate recommendations that are included in the plan. So we really would pride ourselves in being an instrument of the community, and it was wonderful working with businesses along the corridor, property owners, residents within the area, as well as residents citywide throughout the city of Wheat Ridge. For that outreach process, we engaged over 350 community members directly in conversations. We had 3 public meetings with online activities on What's Up Wheat Ridge, 3 advisory committee meetings with 2 sets of focus group meetings as well. We hosted or attended numerous pop-up events, business walks, and community conversations. That's where a lot of those conversations with business owners took place, both in focus groups and business walks. And then provided notifications through connections, postcards, the Mayor's Matters, e-newsletters, press releases, Neighborhood Gazette, and social media. So again, we really tried to get the word out there that the process was happening and create as many opportunities as possible for those who did want to engage to provide their input, their feedback, and ultimately give their stamp of approval on the plan itself. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Mark.
Thanks, Jay. So as Jay and hello everyone, hello council. As Jay and Stephanie mentioned, we're going to give you a quick high-level overview of the recommendations. We went over that in greater detail back in December. I really focused the rest of the presentation on the action plan and the implementation section. So as a reminder, we had 3 larger kind of nesting doll categories in which the topics and strategies and recommendations all sat within, focusing on primary corridor investments, community sub-area enhancements, and overall connectivity improvements. And with those, we got into the weeds of specific strategies and recommendations that could be organized into larger categories. We took a pass at summarizing all that in a graphic format as well to organize how the recommendations really are tied to place. So looking at priority corridor investments, you can see the mixed-use nodes identified in the darker blue, the corridor-focused areas along primarily 44th Avenue, site building and connectivity improvements really in the parcels adjacent to and influenced by our larger corridors, Kipling and 44th. Family-focused activity center being that southeastern anchor of the site, and then overall streetscape design improvements, again, focusing on our major corridor, but looking at some of those laterals as well. For the community sub-area enhancements, while broad coverage, the real kind of main focus of that are kind of 2 larger nodes, one focused on agricultural character and recreation improvements, and the second being on kind of existing employment up in our northeastern corner. The other piece of it's really focused on all other uses, which is really captured by housing for the vast majority of that. So existing neighborhoods and general housing, and the strategies are really looking at how to better augment and support those particular areas. And then the last category for overall connectivity improvements, again, focusing on 44th Avenue, the namesake for our sub-area plan, looking at general corridor enhancements, kind of internal neighborhood connectivity. It's primarily focused in that northwestern quadrant due to the kind of historic agricultural character. That east-west connectivity is pretty challenging up there. A northwestern loop being kind of an augmented slow-speed mobility connection for that area. And then intersection improvements, of which a secondary analysis from the last time we spoke with you all was completed, a signal warrant analysis looking at very detailed intersections about counts and how best to convey both pedestrians and vehicles safely across those intersections, primarily focused on the western half of the area. So that was, again, the reminder of the recommendations. Again, we went through in pretty good detail with you all back in December. We maintained support ratings from 72% to 98%, depending on the strategy. So generally positive reception for all the things that we're exploring as part of this sub-area plan. For implementations, we have 3 types of actions that we're looking at. So there's regulatory actions, business attraction and retention, and then mobility by way of organization. Mobility is a little bit of a catch-all. There are a few things in there that are mobility light or mobility adjacent, but have to do with connectivity and some other larger concepts as well. And then each of the implementation items is tied to different organization of responsibilities through lead and support, a timeline. Stephanie was mentioning that this is the action plan, so the shorter timeline within the larger recommendations, so near term, immediate, midterm, and so forth. And then the financial magnitude, and that really involves the level of of partnership or hard cost that would be associated with that type of improvement. So, starting us off, instead of breaking between each category of the implementation, I'll go ahead and run through these, and then we can go back and revisit some of those if that sounds good. Generally, thumbs up. All right. So the first four, regulatory actions, exploring a legislative rezone of the mixed-use nodes. Those are strategies A1, 2, and 3. So those are the larger nodes along Kipling to the north of 44th Avenue, and then the west gateway down towards the travel center. Creating new zone districts that accommodate the uses identified in the focus areas along the corridor area right now. Current mixed-use zoning, both neighborhood and commercial, are really tied to the scale of a project or a parcel as opposed to the designation of primary and secondary uses. So want to make sure that there's guidance to achieve that vision. Creating landscaping guidelines that incentivize water conservation and consistency in the overall aesthetic. And then exploring the creation of a new urban renewal area for the West 44th Avenue corridor. There are a few overlapping boundaries today that should be looking at a new URA boundary to further incentivize investment. Next four for business attraction and retention actions. And you'll note the many ways of describing an organization here, encouraging businesses along 44th Avenue or within the mixed-use nodes to formally organize as a coalition or committee or association to better align the needs of their individual businesses with kind of the larger needs of the corridor in partnership with the city. And we're intentionally a little looser in that language, knowing that there's some differing opinions on how best to go about that, but a formal coming together in the best interest of those businesses. Developing and implementing a West 44th Avenue corridor brand and identity. If you'll recall from the very first wall graphic we took, there was a big neon pizza sign to the east end there that probably won't actually come to fruition, but the idea of really providing a brand and character to that part of the corridor. Activating the Family Focused Activity Center with regular and pop-up events, and then creating educational materials and increasing the quality of customer service to assist the greater community. There's a lot of great assets and resources that the city does have available, and it's making sure that businesses, residents know that they exist and have a very streamlined path of identifying that funding support or organizational support. All right. And again, that last category there, mobility actions, and this will be the remainder of the actions for the document. Determining preferred cross-sections for both 44th Avenue, emphasizing changes behind the curb, as well as a preferred cross-section for the I-70 frontage road. That was the loop trail, or the northwestern loop that we previously identified. Partnering with private property owners to increase the quality of pedestrian connections off corridor. So that's getting folks from the primary corridors to business entrances to key nodes or parks, providing really logical connections for those on the corridor to those businesses and other areas of interest. Signalizing and improving crossings at Robb, Parfit, Miller, Van Gordon, and Tabor. Looking at current signalization infrastructure and what's conveying pedestrian traffic today and how we might do that better or more safely in the future. And then improving Tabor Street Bridge and the West 44th Avenue Bridge at Clear Creek, so that's that eastern boundary, to better accommodate bicyclists and pedestrians. Tabor Street being the sole kind of connection up to the light rail station and down to the creek down there. All right, moving along here. Mobility actions continued. So improving both Ward Road, Kipling Street, and Carr Street underpasses, part through the aesthetic and kind of experience of that with lighting and art, as well as safety considerations in terms of physical buffers. Conducting an access management plan for commercial properties along the corridor. So every time we have a curb cut or a drive aisle, it makes navigation for slow speed wheeled vehicles, whether it's a wheelchair or a bike or a trailer or anything in between, a little more challenging. So looking for opportunities to consolidate where appropriate. And part of that would be a larger planning exercise that would have heavy, obviously, business owner input into that. And then evaluating the feasibility of extending the existing center median on the west end of the corridor to limit truck turning movements between Van Gordon and Tabor Streets. We have a lot of concern from residents and community members down there around the safety and impacts of the large vehicle traffic. So one of the considerations for addressing that from a safety standpoint. Y'all are doing great. We got 3 more. Okay. Mobility actions continued, part 2. Formalizing points of entry to Clear Creek Trail at Van Gordon Street, Tabor, Parfit, and then the Iris-Hoyt kind of wishbone connection there. This coincides with the analysis the open space management plan had performed as well, identifying areas that not only tied to larger connections or clusters of business along the 44th Avenue corridor, but best aligned with habitat restoration and other considerations along the Creek corridor as well. Conducting a master planning effort for the Bauhaus and Historic Park and surrounding area to tie into a larger park system and community asset there. And lastly, creating science standards for pedestrian, bicycle, and vehicular-oriented safety, wayfinding access kind of throughout the sub-area. And with that, I'm done rambling.
Very good. Thank you.
Just going to wrap us up really quick. Since last time, all the other times we've been in front of you, it's always been at study sessions. So just reminding, this is the final, hopefully, public hearing for the item. So don't forget to take public comment before moving on to discussion. And we did not receive additional comments on Wheat Ridge Speaks for this particular hearing, but there were 2 comments submitted prior to Planning Commission, and those are included in your materials. And with that, staff is recommending adoption of the 44th Avenue Sub-Area Plan, which would ultimately amend the city's comprehensive plan for the area. And that wraps up our presentation. So we're happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before we go to questions from council, I would like to open this up to the public to speak on this item. I don't have anyone signed up to speak, but if you are here in City Hall and would like to speak, you may do so now by coming to the podium. If you're joining us online, if you would please raise your hand and we will bring you into the meeting. I'll give it
Nobody online, Mr. Mayor.
Just a moment to see if anybody responds. Okay, we don't have any public coming forward, so I'd like to open it up for questions from council. Councilor Hulteen.
Thanks everyone for all your work on this. It's hard to believe it was like a 2019. That was like another world that we all lived in. But 44th Avenue hasn't changed that much since 2019. I have a couple of just technical questions. In your recommendation about creating an urban renewal area on 44th, recognizing that it'll butt against, I think, 2 other urban renewal areas, would part of that process be like we would carve out, or would we look at reestablishing the other urban renewal areas to be more consistent with what touches 44th and what is the other urban renewal areas?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and the reason that it's kind of explore type of language, because we would need to identify if it's targeted or separate from the urban renewal areas that are in place now. One example of implementation that's happening right now is the creation of a urban renewal area in that northeast corner of the sub area, and that is currently in progress. So it could be piecemealed and it could be reevaluated to assess altogether. Yeah.
Okay, great. And then I was gonna just make a joke about, I just do not approve the median blocking my illegal left turn out of long shots.
Overruled.
Yeah. I guess my one other sort of question, comment, and then a comment. So there's one of the last things Mark mentioned there was just talking about some consistent signage protocol through the sub area, focused on active transportation and other. I would just really appreciate as a city that being consistent citywide. We have like 2 or 3 different systems going through our city for bike and pedestrian wayfinding. And if something really like snazzy and eye-catching and compelling comes out of 44th, I would love for the city to be able to look at adopting that citywide. But I would be a little bit hesitant about a wayfinding program specific to that sub-area when we're really looking at like connectivity throughout the community. And we're in need of a consistent signage program for that. So I guess it's more of a comment than a question. And then the last thing that I just want to comment on, and it's been kind of a little bit of my my grief since the beginning of the project, to no fault of the consultants, but I'm just as the representative of the area immediately to the east, I do find some of the recommendations that come out of this like puzzling that they don't extend to Wadsworth. When one of the biggest things that came out of this was around mobility and connectivity and vibrancy and waymaking, and we're investing a gazillion $1 million in Wadsworth, making it this incredible corridor where we're really investing in multimodal connectivity. So I just want to recognize that this plan ends at the Clear Creek, and we have this pretty significant gap in connectivity to our biggest corridor in the city. And so I just hope that our staff and my peers, when we're looking at mobility connectivity, that it doesn't just end at the creek, that it extends to Wadsworth, and that we extend some of that placemaking too. I mean, there are several businesses that extend west of Wadsworth and don't quite make it to the creek, but I'm very aware of that gap. And other than that, I think it's an absolutely fabulous plan. I'm super excited, and I like the quick win strategies out of this. But I think we'd be doing a great disservice to the rest of the community for those corridor investments to stop at the creek and not to extend to Wadsworth, where we, again, are investing a lot of money to create a vibrant multimodal corridor. So thanks for all your work.
Thank you. Maybe we need a ferry across the creek. A ferry. Councilor Hoppe.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for your comments, Councilwoman Hulteen. I also have been kind of disappointed that the east side of 44th Avenue is left out of this, but when I first commented on it, I felt like there was a kind of a we'll get to that type of comment, and so I'm just wondering if staff can answer if that's maybe something on the horizon for later down the road, or is there some sort of plan for that connectivity all the way down? That is a main corridor through our entire community from east to west, west to east. And so I just wonder if there's a plan coming up for that.
Yeah, so we won't ignore, just to, from a staff perspective, we look at the connectivity all around, but we do have a comprehensive plan update coming up in the next year to 2 years. So we will make sure to address that portion and the connectivity and mobility that apply here to extend out.
Thank you.
Thank you. Additional questions? Comments? You guys must have done a pretty good job. Don't see any more questions from council, so thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Councilor Dozeman, may I have a motion on this item?
I move to approve Resolution 21, 2023, a resolution adopting the 44th Avenue Subarea Plan as an amendment to the city's comprehensive plan, Envision Wheat Ridge.
Second.
We have a motion and a second by Councilor Nosler-Beck. Is there discussion on the motion? Councilor Nosler-Beck?
Thank you so much to the entire team and all the staff and to council for all of the study sessions and conversations that we had around this sub-area plan, and to all the community that participated. I see a lot of my feedback in this, and I see a lot of everybody else's feedback as well. I just want to also address, I just totally, completely agree with both Councilmember Hulteen and Councilmember Hoppe on just making sure that we go all the way up to Wadsworth. As someone who lives right on the cusp of where this is ending, right at where Clear Creek is, there is a little bit of you start to feel a little bit of a halt in our community, that's kind of seen as, I don't know, down at the end of the hill, and then there's everything else up, and people who live there don't feel that. That's just kind of a thing that's, I think we have to have a line somewhere. And so anyway, I just really support that, and when we go into the comprehensive plan, I definitely will be looking to that too. So just huge shout out to everybody. This was a great process, and appreciate y'all very much.
Thank you. Councilor Dozeman.
Thank you. And I would like to thank all of the residents and community members and businesses that contributed to the focus groups and having this robust public input process. I think the city staff and MIG and our consultants have done a wonderful job at engaging the public and really taking our feedback and having it reflect in the final plan. And I appreciate that this is really going to highlight what I believe is one of our most tucked away gems in the community of the Clear Creek Trail, and trying to connect that to a major corridor through District 4. So I really appreciate that, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, will the clerk please poll the council?
Mr. Mayor, the motion has passed unanimously.
Thank you. Okay, we will go to agenda item number 4. Councilor Ohm, would you please introduce this item?
Thank you, Mayor. Motion to accept rights-of-way from adjacent property owners along Wadsworth Boulevard and from adjacent streets between 35th Avenue and Interstate 70. At issue, Wadsworth Boulevard is a state highway that is owned and maintained by the Colorado Department of Transportation. The city has completed the right-of-way acquisition process for the improved Wadsworth project. Certain property owners along Wadsworth have conveyed to the city the necessary rights-of-way by warranty deed, quitclaim deed, or court order for the improved Wadsworth project. City Council needs to officially accept the rights-of-way as city property.
Thank you. This will be a motion of the council, and it is not quasi-judicial. Mr. Goff, do we have a staff presentation on this?
We do. We have a brief presentation from Mr. Westberg.
Okay, Mr. Westberg.
Yeah, so thank you, council. This is a little bit of a milestone here. We're going to accept property from 65 different property owners along Wadsworth tonight. So I wanted to just talk about that a little bit. Just as a reminder, there were 3 full acquisitions that we did. We're keeping the remnant pieces of those, but we are transferring what's needed for Wadsworth and the side streets to transferring what's needed for Wadsworth to CDOT and keeping what's needed for the side streets for us. And then we had 62 partial acquisitions, again, transferring what's needed to Wadsworth and then keeping the right-of-way that we acquired along the side streets. So I just want to talk through a couple of things. I'm not going to talk about all 65 properties tonight, but just wanted to talk about a couple of things today. This is 41st Avenue, and this is Wadsworth. All these little colored pieces along the sides are the right-of-way that we acquired. And then this is one of the full acquisitions, which was the old Raleigh Berto site. They are now next door in a much nicer building, so I think they're very happy with where they've landed. But the stuff that's in the middle was already CDOT right-of-way, and the stuff on 41st was already city right-of-way. Council took action earlier this evening to set a public hearing for the transfer for what we're going to be sending to CDOT. And I just want to chat about that for just a little bit. This is that same area. And so what we're going to be doing is this sort of orange, I'm not sure what color that is, this light orange area is the part that was existing right-of-way. So there's a piece of it here that was actually city right-of-way that we're going to transfer to CDOT, because we want that new right-of-way line to be back here along the back. And then these were those right-of-ways that were acquired. And on the other side, you'll see that we're transferring some of this, but not all of the old Raleigh Berto site. We're keeping some of this as city right-of-way, and then the rest of this will be a remnant parcel that we'll be working with other staff to possibly sell to somebody once the construction is over. Right now, it's a very small but very needed staging area right in the middle of the project, so the contractor's using that today. So I just wanted to sort of talk through some of those things. The council memo talked about those things, but just to sort of show what there's existing CDOT right-of-way, some existing city right-of-way that's going to CDOT. There's new right-of-way that's we're keeping and new right-of-way that we're transferring to CDOT. That'll all be dealt with in a couple of weeks, but just wanted to sort of talk through that a little bit tonight. And I'm ready for questions or anything else you guys have got.
Okay, thank you very much. Before we go to questions from council, I'll invite the public to speak on this item number 4. I don't have anyone signed up to speak, but if you're here at City Council chambers, you may come to the podium and speak on this item. If you are joining us online, you may raise your hand and we'll bring you into the meeting. And I'll give it just a moment and see if anyone responds to either
Nobody
of those.
online, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, we don't have anybody coming forward, so I'll open this up to questions from council. Councilor Nosler-Beck.
Thanks. I had a question just in the ownership of whether it's CDOT or the city. This 41st is where Wilmore Davis is located, and
Yes.
the schools, just in a lot of the students who are in that neighborhood over there are now going to be going to Stevens. And I'm just wondering, in these, acquisitions and all of those pieces, like, who's the entity that would ultimately be who we're working with when we're trying to figure out safe crossings?
So at 41st, there will be a traffic signal. The traffic signal that's currently at 3 Acre Lane is going to move south to 41st Avenue. So there will be a traffic signal at 41st that will have crosswalks on both sides of the street for people to cross from the west side to the east side or back the other direction. To directly answer your question, all of the stuff within right-of-way is owned by, within what's going to be CDOT's right-of-way will be owned by CDOT, However, we're under obligation to maintain everything behind the curb. They maintain everything between the curbs, except for the traffic signal equipment, which CDOT maintains. So we'll work with them, but like I said, at 41st, we're already going to have crossings, and then we'll have crossings at 38th, and we'll have a sort of a midway crossing at 39th where the Safeway entrance is. That's where one of the CFI locations is, so we'll eventually have a crosswalk at that location too.
Okay, thank you.
Additional questions? Councilor Hulteen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this is just threadbare. Well, it's pretty directly related to this. So riding my bike to work has gotten very difficult. Again, I can't get through the intersection at 44th and Wadsworth. There's no pedestrian or bikeway through there. And so like this morning, I was forced to ride my bike on the sidewalk and then literally across lawns on Wadsworth in order to get out of my neighborhood. And so since that's fresh in my experience this morning, I know the regulations around providing safe places for people to walk and bike and what's required, and I'm sure there's some sort of designated route that's a couple blocks to the west or something like that. But with these acquisitions and right away, like, is it possible to create some sort of passageway for people who aren't in cars? I mean, you literally can't navigate. If I was in a wheelchair, I wouldn't have been able to like get through. And so I'm just wondering, with access to these properties, is that something that we can be doing while the project's under construction? Because
the construction team's trying to do the best they can with everything. The difficulty is we're utilizing all the right-of-way we bought on the west side to put the temporary detour in, and then we're building on the right-of-way on the east side. So it's very difficult in this interim condition to sort of do that. Now, as they continue marching south, you'll notice coming from the north that they're getting the pavement down. They're also getting the sidewalks built on that east side. So hopefully those will reach 44th soon and get across 44th as we continue to go south this summer. And so at least on the east side of Wadsworth, we'd have, the full 10-foot and 12-foot sidewalk on that east side, depending on which side of 44th you're on. That'll reach down to at least 41st initially and then continue on down south as they keep marching south. It's very hard on the west side to provide something just because we're utilizing almost that full right-of-way for those temporary lanes to get everybody shifted over so we can do all the work on the east side.
okay, I think that was my question. So
Yeah.
you are utilizing all that western. Okay, all right.
Yeah.
I will say the new road at the northeast corner is gorgeous, and the connectivity to the creek is like stunning. So it's very exciting to actually see stuff get built. So
It's
I'm
turning
looking-
out pretty well.
It is. It's looking great. So, so just if you can ask the contractor, like when stuff like that happens, to get the signage for the bike ped detours so that people aren't getting stuck.
Yeah.
That would be really helpful.
Yeah, we can do that.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Further questions of staff? Seeing none, thank you very much, Mr. Westberg. Nice presentation. Okay, Councilor Ohm, may I have a motion on this item?
Thank you, Mayor. I move to accept the rights of way from the adjacent property owners along Wadsworth Boulevard and from adjacent streets between 35th Avenue and Interstate 70.
Second.
We have a motion and a second by Councilor Hoppy. Is there discussion on the motion? Seeing none, will the clerk please poll the council?
Mr. Mayor, the motion has passed unanimously.
Thank you very much. We will now go to agenda item number 5. Mayor Pro Tem Stites, would you please introduce this item?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Motion to accept the transfer of property from the Mile High Flood District for a parcel of property along Lena Gulch on the east side of Parfett Street. The owners of 3610 Parfett Street reached out to see if the city would be interested in acquiring the north portion of their property that encompasses Lena Gulch. Most of the area is paved with concrete and is not usable or maintained by the property owner. In addition, the area is within the floodplain for Lena Gulch. This is all floodway at this location. The floodway is the most restrictive portion of the floodplain as it conveys the flood flows for Lena Gulch. The city benefits from owning this parcel by having more of the floodway and city ownership for appropriate long-term maintenance, which will be completed by Mile High Flood District, MHFD, to facilitate the transfer of the property to the city. MHFD recently acquired the parcel. The city needs to officially, or the council needs to officially accept the property from MHFD in order for the transfer to take place.
Thank you. This will be a motion of the council. It is not quasi-judicial. Mr. Goff, do we have a staff presentation on this?
We do. Mr. Westberg is primed and ready to go.
Mr. Westberg, once again.
It's just as short as the last one, so these are my records for only having 3 slides, including the title slide.
We're making...
As Councilmember Stites said in the opening, in his issues and opening statement, this was something the property owner initiated. Now that this has happened, we're actually going to ask the district. There's a few more properties east of here that are also still in private ownership that are completely encumbered by floodway. We're going to ask them if they'd be willing to go through the pain and heartache they went through to get this one. It took about 6 months to work through the mortgage company, so it was a little bit challenging. The graphic that's on the screen right now is just showing that parcel. The homeowner lives here at 3610 Parfit. They had a big chunk of their property that was within Lena Gulch. There was an easement for all the work that's there and for us to maintain it and stuff, but getting it in fee simple under the city, there are several benefits that it has to us as an organization. It's just a little bit easier. We don't have to schedule as much. You know, if we occupy the easement for some reason, we've got to contact the property and say, hey, we're going to go occupy the easement. This is just ours now. It also gives me just a few more points in our community rating system that helps us maintain our Class 5 status on that. So this is just a street view from Parfit, looking basically on the north side of the garage, just showing just how unusable this is for them. They can't do anything in there. And so that's why they approached us, and we jumped all over it. And the district now has a program that does these kind of things. So again, we're going to reach out to them, see if we can acquire a few more of the properties along Lena Gulch now that we've got the first one in the bag. So that's all I've got, and I'm open for questions.
Thank you very much. Before we go to questions from council, I'll open this up to the public. I don't have anyone signed up to speak, but if you're here and would like to speak, you may do so now. And if you're online, joining us online and wish to speak on this item, you may raise your hand and we'll bring you into the meeting. And it doesn't look like we've got anybody coming on online or in the hall to speak, so we will go to questions from council. Any questions from council of Mr. Westberg before we go to a motion? Looks like you were pretty thorough on this one, Mr. Westberg. Thank you so much. Mayor Pro Tem Stites, may I have a motion on this item?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to accept the transfer of property from Mile High Flood District for a parcel of property along Lena Gulch on the east side of Parfet Street.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Second? Hutchinson? Okay. Is there discussion on the motion? Seeing none, will the clerk please poll the council?
Mr. Mayor, the motion has passed unanimously.
Thank you. This will bring us to agenda item number 6. Councilor Hoppe, would you please introduce this item?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Resolution number 22-2023, a resolution amending the fiscal year 2023 budget, general fund budget to reflect the approval of supplemental budget appropriation in the amount of $125,379.19 for the purpose of awarding a contract to HDR Engineering, Inc. for professional services to create and implement a community outreach and engagement strategy regarding residential waste management practices in Wheat Ridge. At issue, the city is seeking a firm to create and implement a community outreach and engagement strategy regarding residential waste management practices in Wheat Ridge. Staff conducted a competitive solicitation process to select a consultant to manage this process. HDR Engineering, Inc. was selected at a cost of $125,379.19.
Thank you. This will be a resolution of the council. It is not quasi-judicial. Mr. Goff, do we have a staff presentation on this item?
We do. Our Sustainability Coordinator, Mary Hester, is here this evening.
Okay,
Thanks,
Ms.
Mary.
Hester.
All right. Well, good evening, Mayor and City Council, and thank you for having me tonight. Tonight, I'll be discussing a request for a supplemental budget appropriation to award a contract to HDR Engineering to implement a community engagement and outreach strategy about residential waste management practices in Wheat Ridge. So I'll start by going over the purpose of this contract and budget request. Then I'll move into background and prior action on this topic. I'll go through the selection process. Then I will summarize the scope of work for the project and end with staff's recommendation. So the purpose of the supplemental budget appropriation and contract with HDR is to create and implement a public outreach and engagement strategy to better understand the public's opinion regarding potential future changes to residential waste management practices in Wheat Ridge before exploring any one option in greater detail. And this engagement process will result in a final report with recommendations on next steps, but the goal of this process is really to understand the public's opinion, not to make a decision about changing current practices. Accepted by Council in June of 2018. And this plan focuses on 6 areas of sustainability, one of which is solid waste and recycling. And so within this focus area, there are 2 major goals. One is to improve waste management behavior by residents, businesses, and institutions. And 2 is to reduce negative impacts of waste management on city infrastructure and the local environment. And so this proposed project fits within both of these goals. It's in alignment with the Sustainability Action Plan, and responsible waste management is one of the priorities of the committee. This topic was first raised at the January 10th, 2022 City Council meeting, where staff was asked to return with an overview of waste management policies and potential organized waste strategies. So subsequently, information on potential strategies such as pay-as-you-throw, city contracted hauling, or enhanced licensing requirements were then presented at the April 4th, 2022 study session. And at that time, staff was asked to return with a budget appropriation request for a public outreach and engagement campaign to better understand what residents would like to see before potentially pursuing any specific strategy. So now I'll move on to the selection process. In January, staff issued a request for proposals, and we received 4. We received a joint proposal from EcoCycle and Lotus Sustainability, one from HDR Engineering, Carnes and West, and Raft Tellis. A team of 5 staff members reviewed the proposals, subsequently interviewed 3 of the firms, and ultimately selected HDR Engineering after careful consideration. And so on the screen here is the bid tab sheet. The top portion has with the 4 proposals represents the committee members' scoring for the written proposals initially received, and then the bottom portion below the black line there represents the scores from the interview portion of the process. So you can see that HDR Engineering did have the highest average score in both parts of this process, and they were chosen based on their extensive communication and outreach experience combined with robust experience in and knowledge of the waste sector. HDR was best able to demonstrate their understanding of the project and our needs, their ability to provide information and gather informed feedback from the public while remaining neutral, which will be crucial to this process. And that, again, combined with their experience, is what made them stand out above the other proposals that we received. And so HDR's project proposal will span approximately 18 months, and it will include 4 major components. So the first component is project management. HDR will conduct a project initiation meeting and regular meetings thereafter with the project team to exchange information and provide updates. Next, there will be a public engagement plan. So HDR will conduct research to better understand existing waste and recycling sentiments within the community. They'll also research community demographics to understand any potential communication preferences, values, and interests. HDR will also conduct stakeholder interviews, and then all of this research will culminate into the public engagement plan. And that will be used to lead the third component of this project, which is public outreach. And during this portion of the project, HDR will conduct 1 public open house in addition to a self-guided online meeting. They will continue to engage with the elected officials and Sustainable Wheat Ridge Committee. They'll conduct interviews with existing waste haulers in Wheat Ridge who have a lot of influence over their customers, and they will conduct 2 digital surveys within the community. And finally, they'll attend 3 existing events in Wheat Ridge. And after that, they'll analyze all the feedback that they've received into a final report and recommendations on next steps. And finally, the 4th component is communication materials. So throughout the entire process, HDR will develop content for the project's webpage on What's Up Wheat Ridge. as well as copy for social media, mailers, presentations, reports, and events. And so lastly, staff does recommend approval of the supplemental budget appropriation request and contract with HDR Engineering. And so that'll conclude my presentation. Thank you again for having me tonight, and I'm available for any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Before we go to questions of council, I will open this up to the public to speak on this. I have no one signed up to speak, but if you're in council chambers and would like to speak, you may come forward now. And if you are joining us online, raise your hand and we'll bring you into the meeting.
Nobody online, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, it doesn't look like we have any public comments, so I'll open this up for council questions. Ms. Hester. Councilor Hulteen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mary, for bringing this forward. It's exciting to see that we've got somebody lined up. Just one question, since the bulk of the focus here is around community outreach. I'm curious if there's any plans to use like What's Up Wheat Ridge and integrate the information that we've received from Let's Talk. I mean, we already have some community input, like with our survey and Let's Talk, but also recognizing that like there's some online, but there's kind of a focus on like the one open house and then attending like 3 other community events, but we have really good digital stuff we're using. So is there a plan to kind of utilize some of our tools as well to reach people?
Yeah, so What's Up Wheat Ridge, that'll be the primary platform that we have the project information on, and so any communications with surveys, digital surveys, and things like that. Their HDR is proposing to create fact sheets and really any of their copy that we would push out through What's Up Wheat Ridge. So that will certainly be a big component. And in talking with Ashley Holland in the Let's Talk programming, what they can do when we create a new web page on What's Up Wheat Ridge, they'll kind of send out a message to everyone who is subscribed, and people can then further self-select into the project and make sure that they're receiving information that way. But yes, we do plan to put a big emphasis on a What's Up Wheat Ridge page for this project.
Okay, great, thank you.
Any additional questions? Councilor Ohm.
Yeah, mine's a little bit of a question comment. So I am familiar with HDR Engineering. They do right now some of our city's infrastructure, CDOT, if I'm not correct. And when those types of RFPs go out, they're always for the lowest qualifying bid. My understanding is that this one was based on the highest qualifying number, correct? The score, highest qualifying, highest score.
It's actually, Mr. Ohm, it's based on best value to the city overall. So the scores are somewhat subjective because there's different evaluators throughout the city that we use, but those are really a starting point. But through the interview process with these firms, we did shortlist the firms and interviewed them, and we learned more through that process also. And there was some concerns with some of the lower bid firms that you see on the list. They didn't bring the community engagement experience or the experience with waste management that we really needed in a firm. So that's why I think the decision was to go with a higher priced firm. But again, it's best value. We don't have to go with necessarily the lowest bid.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any additional questions? Ms. Hester, I had a question. The price that we're contracting, the 125.3 with HDR is a different number than the number that was submitted on their bid. Can you reconcile that for me?
Yes, that is a good question. Thank you for bringing that up. So the number on the bid sheet, that was their original proposal, and then we were able to come down, I believe it was a 4% reduction based on an existing relationship with them.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions before we go to a motion? Okay, Councilor Hoppe, thank you very much, Ms. Hester.
Thank you.
Councilor Hoppe, may I have a motion on this item?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to approve resolution number 22-2023, a resolution amending the fiscal year 2023 general fund budget to reflect the approval of a supplemental budget appropriation in the amount of $125,379.19 for the purpose of awarding a contract to HDR Engineering, Inc. for professional services to create and implement a community outreach and engagement strategy regarding residential waste management practices in Wheat Ridge.
Second.
I think we have a second by Councilor Hulteen. Is there discussion on the motion? Councilor Dozeman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the hospital has worked closely with HDR. They were our architecture firm for the new hospital. And so our office in particular has worked with HDR for the naming opportunities, and they have been wonderful to work with. And I just want to really tout them for the work that they do in our community and continued contributions to Wheat Ridge overall. So thank you.
Thank you. Any additional discussion on the motion? Seeing none, will the clerk please poll the council?
Mr. Mayor, the motion has passed unanimously.
Thank you. We will go to agenda item number 7. Councilor Hutchinson, would you please introduce this item?
Thank you, Mayor. Motion to approve payment to Bank of Oklahoma for 2023 principal and interest payments in the amount of $3,502,800 for the City of Wheat Ridge, Colorado, Sales and Use Tax Revenue Bonds, Series 2017A. At issue on May 2nd, 2017, the city closed on Series 2017A Sales and Use Tax Revenue Bonds in the par amount of $30,595,000 with a net premium of $2,687,079 for a total of $33,282,079. The city's first interest payment for 2023 is due June 1st in the amount of $321,400, and the principal and second interest payment is due December 1st in the amount of $3,181,400. Funds to cover the 2023 payments are budgeted in the 2023 2E bond fund budget.
Thank you. This will be a motion of the council. It is not quasi-judicial. Mr. Goff, do we have a presentation on this item?
Staff has nothing to add. We're here for any questions.
Okay. Before we go to questions of council, we will go to any questions from the public. I have no one signed up to speak on this, but once again, if you're here in the hall and would like to speak, you may do so now. And if you're joining us online, if you would please raise your hand, we'll be glad to bring you into the meeting.
Nobody online, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, I don't see any of the public coming to speak. Are there any questions of council for staff? Okay, seeing none, Councilor Hutchinson, may I have a motion on this item?
I move to approve payment to Bank of Oklahoma for 2023 principal and interest payments in the amount of $3,502,800 for the City of Wheat Ridge, Colorado Sales and Use Tax Revenue Bonds, Series 2017A.
Second.
We have a motion and a second by Councilor Mayor Pro Tem Stites. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, will the clerk please poll the council?
Mr. Mayor, the motion has passed unanimously.
Okay. Thank you very much. That concludes our action items on our agenda. We will now go to city managers matters. Mr. Goff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple quick things. As you all know, the city submitted two congressionally directed funding requests to our senators and our congresswoman in D.C., and we just were notified that Senator Hickenlooper did accept both of those applications and did forward both of those to the appropriation committees for consideration. So, as a reminder, we had a $2 million request for our NOAA, or Naturally Occurring Affordable Housing Program, to preserve affordable housing within the city, then also a $200,000 request for our Clear Creek Makerspace program. So we takes several months to find out if it gets approved in the appropriations committees, but we'll let you know if that happens. Also, the city manager group in Jefferson County had a meeting with the Severe Weather Network the last couple weeks, and they're already preparing for the next weather season. It may snow tonight, I don't know, but I think we're about done with this weather season. But the next one starts in October. The Glory of God Lutheran Church in Wheat Ridge is going to be the location for this next season for severe weather sheltering. And we did learn, though, that they are struggling a little bit raising funds for this next year's sheltering program. All the cities in Jefferson County have committed to provide some funding. We've never funded them in the past. I thought we have, and they haven't really even asked. So I've authorized a $5,000 contribution out of the city manager's contingency fund this year to help them, and then they're applying for $10,000 through the city's community grant program for the fiscal year 2024. So that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. City Attorney's Matters, Mr. Dahl.
Nothing tonight, thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll go to Elected Officials Matters, and we'll start with our City Clerk, whom we honored with a proclamation today.
Thank you again for the proclamation. I have nothing further. Thank you, Mr.
Okay, you're most welcome. Thank you so much. And we will start on the dais with Councilor Nosler Beck.
Thanks, Mayor. Just a reminder, May 10th, Wilmer Davis is having their final blowout big bash from 5 to 7. And then I think Vivian is doing theirs on Saturday. I don't know those times, but join us for some fun. And if you're a former alumni, there's a place where you can submit photos and things like that if you just go to the Wilmer Davis Facebook page. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilor Hutchinson.
Nothing tonight.
Thank you. Councilor Dozman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to give a shout out to Jefferson Center for Mental Health. They had their 65th anniversary, and we're celebrating at the soiree at the station this last week, and it was a great fundraiser, and they had a lot of information about the services that they offer, in particular to children in our community. And I wanted to just thank them for their ongoing efforts and for the city in their partnership and trying to get the word out and increase awareness and resources and tools to our community about mental health.
Thank you. Councilor Hulteen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've got two things. I do also want to recognize Jefferson Center, and especially with our youth in the community. COVID has been incredibly difficult on our kids, and I know there's some great programming, great support out of Jefferson Center, and I really appreciate how the city and this council is putting resources to supporting our kids to make sure that their mental health needs are being met, because that is a huge indicator of their success moving forward. So just gratitude for that partnership and their presence in our community. And then I, this afternoon, sat in on the DRCOG Technical Advisory Committee, and we, one of the things before the committee, which will be coming to the board shortly, is awarding funding to Wheat Ridge for the 35th Avenue improvements to make it safer for people walking and biking, as well as some more investments for our Tabor Street. So I just appreciate we continue to be very competitive regionally, getting those investments into our community, and it's because we've got good ideas and good plans and great staff that makes the case. So look for more multimodal dollars raining down. So excited.
Great to have that partnership. Thank you very much. Councilor Ohm.
Thank you, Mayor. I also attended the Jefferson Center mental health soiree at the station with Councilmember Dozman, Nosler-Beck, and the mayor, and our clerk, Steve Kirkpatrick, and his wife, which was a wonderful event, and saw some other friendly faces there as well. One thing I'd also like to point at, or ask our citizens and our council is, as this year goes on, should we, what are our thoughts? And I'm not asking for a consensus. What are our thoughts for a criterium in our city? Pros, cons. I'd like to get some feedback as we kind of move forward, because sometimes I hear from businesses that they're not in favor. Sometimes I hear some citizens are not very pro criterium, and so like I said, I'm not asking for consensus, but I just want to kind of have an understanding of about that criterion, and I don't know if we need to have a future study session. I don't know if it needs to go that route, but just to kind of get some kind of understanding for our city. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Hoppy.
Nothing tonight. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Stites.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A few of us had the opportunity to sit with Congresswoman Brittany Pedersen today here at City Hall, and she was phenomenal. She's always very gracious with her time, and had a good dialogue with us today, and so we appreciate her coming up. And other than that, we've been to several ribbon cuttings lately, so business is good in Wheat Ridge, and hopefully we can keep it that way. And if you can, especially with Mother's Day coming up, guys, Mother's Day is coming up here in May. If you can find it, buy it at Wheat Ridge. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I was really honored to be able to attend the Jefferson County Mental Health soiree that we've heard about this from the dais on, I think, last Thursday. Great event. Really appreciate Jefferson County Mental Health putting that on, and really appreciate the work that they do in our communities. I've been really fortunate to attend several ribbon cuttings over the last week or two, and one in particular on last Friday was the Construction Industry Training Council, which has opened up a new training in the construction arts at 52nd and Kipling. They have about 750 students that are employed by industry and going through training at that center. So if you know anyone or have any relatives or friends that would like to get into the construction industry as a plumber, electrician, mechanical HVAC, carpentry, maybe masonry, and other allied trades, that certainly is a great opportunity and a great location to do it. So they're a very good opportunity for a great career in the construction industry. There was a little date mistake in the second Saturday a coffee with the mayor, which should be on May the 13th. Should be the second Saturday, and I happen to be occupied with a DRCOG retreat, annual planning retreat. So Mayor Pro Tem Stites has agreed to take my place at that meeting. So I hope you'll join him in lieu of me, and I'm sure it'll be a much more interesting and informative group than usual. So thank you very much for doing that, and I hope that we see you then. I have nothing else on my plate. Is there any further business to come before council? Councilwoman Dozeman.
Thank you, Mayor. You speaking about the ribbon cuttings kind of just brought something else up. Jeffco School Board of Education had two meetings this last week on the 18th and the 22nd about reimagining secondary education. So those conversations around middle schools and high schools are beginning. And so I'd really love for those that were engaged in the conversations most recently about the closures to continue to remain engaged and be a part of those public input processes. A lot of the conversation was surrounding, post-secondary education, if they're going to higher education opportunities, and we are seeing a lot of students wanting to go into the trades and seek certifications in those, and if we are meeting those needs for those students. So great conversation this last Saturday. I appreciate Guy Namiash joining the conversation. I also saw Katie Zabak, so Wheat Ridge was pretty well represented on the snowy Saturday morning, but those conversations are happening. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Any further announcements or business to come before us before we adjourn? Thank you all for being here. We will be back a week from tonight in study session right here. Mr. Goff? Always want to make sure that I got my calendar
We'll be here next
right.
week. Yes, we'll be here next week's study session. Yes.
Okay, all right. So thank you very much. Please be safe as you travel around our city. We will stand adjourned.